In this video, by request, I'm going to talk about two rheumatological or autoimmune conditions: Sjogren syndrome, which is fairly common, and Scleroderma, which is less common. And if you've seen any of my other videos on autoimmune disease, these have some things in common. First, I see quite a few people who believe they have one or other condition, but when I examine them, I doubt that they actually have the condition. And I'm going to talk about how we can be more accurate in making the diagnosis of rheumatological conditions. The second thing they have in common is both are included in Social Security's listing of impairments. And I'm going to put links in the description to this video below to the listings for Sjogren's and for Scleroderma. Hello, I'm John Foster. I'm a medical doctor who does Social Security disability exams. I've done quite a few of them, and as usual, everything I say reflects my own opinions based on my own experience and study, and not the opinions of the Social Security Administration or any other medical body. Now, before I get started, one announcement. This is October 30th, 2025, and some people are concerned about, with the government shutdown, are Social Security disability exams still being done? And the answer is yes. I'm doing my usual amount of Social Security disability exams during the shutdown. So first, what causes all this confusion, and why do people think that they have conditions that they don't really have? Well, when people go to the doctor because they're sick or feeling bad, they usually want three questions answered. Question number one, what's wrong with me? Question number two, what can be done to help? And question number three, how are things likely to turn out? Will I get better? How long will it take to get better? Will I get worse? Is it fatal? Will it cause me to die? And these are all reasonable questions. The problem is there are so many patients who have problems that doctors just can't diagnose. Medicine isn't perfect, and medicine doesn't have all the answers. Honest doctors would say, I don't know, a lot of the time. The problem is that makes patients unhappy. So doctors often look for a label or diagnosis that they can give the patient because that makes the patient happy. Another issue for autoimmune diseases, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is that there are many blood tests for these diseases, but most of the blood tests are lousy. They're positive in a lot of people who don't have the disease, and they're negative in a lot of people who do have the disease. So the bottom line is, if you have aches and pains and feel bad and have no other indications of illness and have a weekly positive blood test for an autoimmune condition, you probably don't have that condition. You may have another condition, or you may simply have aches and pains and feeling bad that medicine at this point in time cannot explain. That doesn't mean that it's all in your head or there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you're one of the thousands of people that medicine doesn't really understand at this time. And if you find this sort of thing interesting, you might want to subscribe to my channel. I generally put out a disability-related video every Friday morning. So let's get down to it. Sjogren syndrome is also called Sicca syndrome, which means dry syndrome. In Sjogren syndrome, the body's immune system attacks normal tissue. Remember that the immune system is like the police. It's constantly patrolling the body and asking, does this belong here? As long as it finds things that do belong here, it just keeps on moving. If it finds something that it thinks doesn't belong there, it attacks it and tries to kill it. Now that's great if what it's attacking and killing is germs. But in an autoimmune condition, the immune system gets confused and attacks normal body tissue, which obviously is bad. In Sjogren's syndrome, the immune system attacks the exocrine glands, the glands in the eyelids that make tears, and the saliva glands in the mouth that make saliva. And that causes the hallmark problems of Sjogren's syndrome, which is dry eyes and dry mouth. And you'll find that people with Sjogren's syndrome tend to carry eye drops and a water bottle everywhere they go, because it's unpleasant to have dry eyes and unpleasant to have a dry mouth. Also, a dry mouth predisposes to dental infections like cavities and periodontal disease. There are tests that can be done for dry eyes and dry mouth. For dry eyes, the test is called a Schirmer's test. For dry mouth, it's called whole cyalometry. These are easy, painless tests that can be done in the office. Like most rheumatological diseases, when the body's immune system attacks an organ, there can be swelling and pain. And in Sjogren's syndrome, the saliva glands at the corners of the mouth and under the jaw can become swollen and tender, although not always. Other common symptoms with Sjogren's syndrome are fatigue. When doctors talk about fatigue, they talk about how you feel if you have the flu, if you have no energy. They don't mean sleepiness or tiredness, how you feel if you've stayed up all night. And also common are joint pains. And unlike rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune arthritis forms, the joints don't show signs of inflammation. They don't become swollen, red, or hot, just painful. And like just about every other rheumatological autoimmune disease, from time to time, other organs may be involved. And in Sjogren's syndrome, this includes the kidneys, the nervous system, which may cause numbness, burning, or tingling in the arms or legs. And it's also associated with a type of cancer called B-cell lymphoma, which is an immune system cell cancer. Now, here's a confounding fact in the diagnosis. There are all sorts of conditions that can cause dry eyes and dry mouth. Many medications, for example, can cause dry eyes and dry mouth. So, just because a person has dry eyes and dry mouth doesn't necessarily mean that they have Sjogren's syndrome. However, if a person is diagnosed with Sjogren's syndrome and doesn't have dry eyes and dry mouth, they probably don't really have it. Now, here's an easy thing you can do at home to see if you might have it. You take your finger and pull down your lower lid and look in the mirror. With a normal person, you'll be able to see a little drop of tear at the corner of the lower lid. With Sjogren's syndrome, there won't be a drop of tear there. Next, you lift your tongue up and look in the mirror and look at the base of the mouth underneath the tongue. In a normal person, there will be moisture there, usually a fair bit of liquid. In Sjogren's syndrome, that won't be present. The eyes and mouth will be dry. And again, if your eyes and mouth aren't dry, you probably have a different condition. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I think is very helpful for these types of diseases, and in my opinion is done way too infrequently, and that's a biopsy. A biopsy is where a doctor takes a small amount of tissue. We're talking here about the size of 1/2 to 1/4 of a pencil eraser, and then looks at it under the microscope. A biopsy for most of these autoimmune conditions is the best way to make a positive diagnosis, far better than the lousy blood tests. It's a simple thing to do. It can be done in the office. You get a little shot of local anesthetic, Novocaine, a tiny amount of tissue is taken. There's usually 1 drop or no bleeding, and you go home. And in a couple of days, the biopsy results are available, and you know if you have the condition or not. In Sjogren syndrome, you'll see damage to the small saliva glands, and they'll be surrounded by a whole bunch of immune cells attacking them. Now remember, the immune system is always patrolling the body, so in normal tissue you'll see healthy saliva glands, and you might see 1 or 2 immune cells here or there just patrolling. But in Sjogren syndrome, there will be a whole bunch of them attacking the normal saliva glands. Next, I'm going to talk about scleroderma. Scleroderma is much less common than Sjogren syndrome. Also, Sjogren syndrome in most cases is not very serious or life-threatening. It's unpleasant, but you don't die from it. Scleroderma, on the other hand, is often very serious and is sometimes fatal. In scleroderma, you get proliferation of connective tissue, gristle. Your body forms gristle in places that it shouldn't. And the name scleroderma means hard or thick skin. And the primary place that the body deposits connective tissue in scleroderma is in the skin. And this makes the skin thick and stiff, like old leather, and it also loses its natural wrinkles and often has a pale or waxy color. It tends to affect the skin of the hands, although it can affect the skin anywhere. And some people have scleroderma that's only limited to the skin, and in that case they have a normal life expectancy, although it can be disabling. However, unfortunately, scleroderma often affects other organs, sometimes very seriously, and in that sort of situation, it can be quite serious and even fatal. Now, there's an easy way to check to see if it's likely you have scleroderma at home. Like I said, it tends to make the skin of the hands and fingers thick and stiff. So you take your hand and you try to pinch the skin of the middle bone of the finger. In a normal person, you can pinch a little bit of the skin. In scleroderma, you cannot pinch any skin. It's too stiff and hard to be able to be pinched. An unusual thing about scleroderma is that we don't see a lot of inflammation. We don't see a lot of immune cells. We just see a lot of deposition of connective tissue. Now, scleroderma can affect a broad range of organs. One of the most common is the esophagus, the swallowing tube that goes from your throat down to your stomach. And it can cause problems with the esophagus, and those can include food sticking in the throat, acid coming back up from the stomach, and heartburn or indigestion in this area. Another problem that just about everyone with scleroderma has is Raynaud's syndrome. Raynaud's syndrome is a problem with the circulation to the fingers and the toes. The little blood vessels that supply the blood to the fingers and the toes tend to shut off and pinch shut. And what will happen is intermittently, usually when exposed to cold, the fingers will become numb and have color changes. They may be white, very red, or blue. Now, another confusing issue is that there's a condition called primary Raynaud's, which is far more common than Raynaud's from Scleroderma. I actually have primary Raynaud's, and so does one of my siblings, and I've had it since I was a teenager. And when my hands are exposed to cold, they become numb, and parts of my fingers may turn white, and then when I warm them up again, they go back to normal. And I've had that for decades, and I have no other rheumatological or autoimmune problems. The only real issue I have with it is that if my hands are very cold, patients don't like it when I touch them. So I keep a pair of hand warmers in case my hands are experiencing Raynaud's syndrome and I need to warm them up before I touch a patient. Now, in people with scleroderma, the Raynaud's can be much more severe. It can cut off the circulation so badly that the fingertips may develop ulcers or even gangrene, and the person may lose parts of their fingers. I'm going to include links to 2 pictures of people with fairly bad scleroderma of the hands in the description to this video below. Now, other organs that may be affected in some people with scleroderma. Number 1 is the kidneys, and this can be anywhere from mild to very severe, causing complete kidney failure. The lungs. Connective tissue can form in the lungs, which is basically scarring of the lungs, and this can cause trouble breathing. The gastrointestinal system, that can cause problems with digestion. And the heart, there can be connective tissue deposited in the heart, leading to a stiff, leathery heart that can't beat very well. You can obviously see what a problem that would be. So, if you have one of these problems, what should you do when you're applying for disability? Well, first of all, you should look at the listing for your condition and see what Social Security considers important. And if you have any of the important features, you should note them down. Second, you want to make sure you have the correct diagnosis. At a minimum, you should have a consultation with a rheumatologist, a doctor who specializes in arthritis and autoimmune diseases. If it's Sjogren syndrome, you should have a test for dry eyes and dry mouth. And for both, there are some blood tests, but again, remember, the blood tests are not fantastic. And for Sjogren's, the best test is a biopsy of the inner lip. Next, Social Security considers it extremely significant if you have secondary organs involved. For Sjogren's, that means organs other than the glands that make the tears and the saliva. For Scleroderma, that means organs other than the skin. Also, for Scleroderma, you may have disability of your hands. You may have trouble gripping things, carrying things, lifting things, and manipulating things, such as doing up buttons. Remember, you're not going to be approved based on your diagnosis for either of these conditions. You're going to be approved based on the severity of your condition and how your condition limits your ability to work. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Please keep suggestions for more topics coming. And as always, remember, if it happens, it's possible.